Fancy writing a play for the US stage? Scrivener 3 for Windows has a format for that. Hi, I'm Juliet, and before I go into what's included in the template, I need to find out what a US play should look like, because I don't live in the US. This document from City Theatre in Pittsburgh is pretty comprehensive. I'll leave a link to it in the description, so that's what I'm going to use to compare the template against. Or that's what I thought. The About page unexpectedly gave me a link to a BBC page detailing how US stage plays are set out, which is what this template is based off. That seems a little odd to me, so let's look at them together and see how they differ. The US version says nothing about a title page, whereas the BBC version has one, but I think that's a sensible addition for any submission. In the character list, things are set out differently, but the basic idea is the same. Setting is also set out differently and has a time section below it in the BBC version, which the US version doesn't have. The latter also doesn't have a list of acts and scenes, as the BBC version has. The BBC version displays everything on different pages, whereas the US version just continues on with no page breaks. The scene setting is very different. The US version is just typed as a normal paragraph, and the BBC version is indented halfway across the page, which, if my memory serves me right, is similar to the UK version. The character names and dialogue are largely the same format, as are the stage directions, although the latter are much further indented on the BBC version. The US version doesn't page break between acts, and the BBC version does. My conclusion here is the formats are largely the same idea for the actual play script, but the BBC version has extras, which you might not be expected to add. You probably wouldn't have a problem using this version in the US, but you might need to tweak it a little for specific requirements for submission. Right, let's get started. There's quite a lot in the binder to look at. Let's go to templates first. You'll see there is a new scene template and a new act template. To create a new act container, you can either go to Project, New from Template and select it, or if you know in advance, just duplicating the one that's there would be quickest. Within an act folder, when you create a scene, you'll automatically get the new scene format. The new act folder itself is simply a container. It has nothing in it. The new scene has some preset text, and if we go to the sample, you'll see that tallies with where you have the act and scene numbers and has brackets for enclosing your set description. Looking at the About page, the act and scene numbers are auto-generated, but you can overtype these codes if you wish. Front Matter contains all those extra pages in the BBC format. It looks like title page takes some information from the compile metadata, and there's other information you need to overtype. The character page is set up with a proper indent so that your character description will line up, so this is just an overtype with your details. Setting is once again an overtype and is set up with simple tabs to display the information, so there won't be any wrapping on this one. Back to our first scene. So the first thing you need to do is go into script mode under the Format menu, Script Writing. This will activate the special formatting options to create the text. There are several ways to use these. At the bottom right of the page, you can simply choose your option from the list. Ctrl plus backslash will bring up the list without clicking, and then you type the letter next to the element you want, and it will change. These are also listed under Change Elements in the Script Writing menu, with different shortcodes. You'll see in the bottom centre of the editing screen that it says Tab and Enter. These are based on what the next most likely element is, and pressing one or the other of these keys will create what is listed as the next element. When you press Return, you will often be offered a list to choose from. So let's try out a few. With some elements you will get autocomplete options, which is useful for things such as character names and possibly settings. which will likely be repeated. You will notice that correct capitalisation as per the template is implemented where possible. When you're done, don't forget to exit scriptwriting mode by visiting the Format Scriptwriting menu again. In Compile, you have a special US stage play format, which is set up so that you need not change anything. The only thing you have to put in is your metadata, so that it appears on the title page if you're including one. Any pages you don't want can be deselected in the compile list or deleted from the binder. And it comes out as expected. There is a note in the About page about the Courier font used and what happens if you don't have it installed on your computer. If that's you, you should read through that section. Now, you can customize the individual elements of script formats, but it's a little complicated, and I think this would be a good example script to use. I'll see if I can get this template to look like the US instructions, rather than the BBC ones. If you want to get an overview of the BBC drama format, check out this video next.